Hello again, everybody. This is Brother Chooch for Thinking Out Loud About the End Times. This is Night Watch. I'm going to give you a little report. This isn't going to be as long as we normally have late night fellowship. So just bear with me, and we're just going to talk a little bit about a subject that has interested me, and we have an update on the subject. I watched Bro Chad's video on this, and I saw a couple other people throwing some articles around. So I thought that we would talk about it a little bit because, to be quite honest with you, concerning this particular subject of the red heifers, I was a bit exacerbated by it all because we had been going from one or two qualifying red heifers and then they would get disqualified. One or two more qualifying red heifers and then they would get disqualified. And this last update, I forget which month it was that I gave an update, but we had two, I think two, possibly three good candidates to be kosher red heifers for the rebuilding of the temple. And they had acquired some white hairs and they were declared as not kosher. So here I am saying to myself, how come all these things are converging? And, you don't want to ask why questions to God because he's sovereign. He doesn't have to answer why questions. But I'm just wondering, why would all these other things be converging? And then we thought we had a viable candidate to be a red heifer. And then they become disqualified with no other red heifers in sight. Well, here's the amazing thing is if you're aware of the Old Testament requirements for purification, the ashes of a red heifer is required. And all you need is one red heifer. But you have to understand that it's extremely rare throughout history that there was a kosher red heifer for sacrifice. There hasn't been a kosher red heifer in about 2,000 years, I believe. And so when we heard news that there was a viable candidate and then it became acquired some white hairs, I became very frustrated because with the Hasidic Jews and the Temple Institute, they need a qualifying kosher red heifer in order to sacrifice. And I just got off the Temple Institute website, and the guy who was giving an update on the red heifer said, we could have the temple up, but if we don't have the ashes of the red heifer, if that purification ceremony had not taken place, then the priest cannot perform the sacrifices. So it's quite significant. So why is this important when it comes to end times? Because at the very least, and I believe it's going to happen well before, but by the midway point of the tribulation period, you have to have the temple up and running and also it functioning. Because remember, the abomination that causes desolation causes the daily oblation to cease. So the daily sacrifice to cease. So that means there was There's a literal temple, and there's a literal daily sacrifice. So I listened to Bro Chad's video on the red heifer, and it moved me. Get it? Moved me. Because he spoke about the red heifer. And he got some information from his subs. He posted the article. And I'll be honest with you, when I tuned in originally to his video, I shrugged my shoulders and said, I don't want to hear anything uneventful. Because the last I had heard, that there was the viable candidates all got disqualified. But come to my surprise, Keeks is on. Excuse me. Come to my surprise, there are 3 red heifers that have, excuse me. Wow. Wet the whistle a little bit. There are actually 3 red heifers. Now listen to this carefully. Who had enough white hairs to disqualify them. And a couple or a few months passed, and guess what? Those white hairs turned red again, which is highly unlikely. So these are 3 red heifers that were disqualified that have now become qualified. Now, some might be wondering, because if you've tuned into some of my programs in the past years, I don't know if you would say threatened, but I got so frustrated over this that I asked who's willing to go with me over to Israel with Revlon 340, raspberry red or whatever, and do a nighttime mission with some gloves and some dye and whatever else that needs to be done. And I actually had one of the subs who's a licensed hairdresser volunteer to join me. And I even have footage of me going into the store and buying the package of Revlon or Clairol or something. And we were going over. That's how frustrated we were. But the last second, we called it off. And much to my chagrin, we went another couple years without feeling terribly excited about getting viable red heifers. But you have to understand something, that you don't need to take things into your own hands to make Bible prophecy come to pass. Here we are in 2022, and I know this sounds like a long time, but according to the article that Bro Chad read, if these red heifers could make it 6 more months without hairs turning white, they become viable. In fact, you have 3 of them, only one of them has to make it, because all you need is the ashes of 1 heifer, and that's more than enough ashes to do the purification ceremony. Okay, so we got 3 right now, and we only need 1. So what does that tell us? Well, folks, it's very, very exciting. We're going to tell you why I believe it's very, very exciting. Because it's another clue, a hint, or a sign that the tribulation period is afoot. Because just like I said in the last video I made, or 2 videos ago, I like the idea of a fall start of the tribulation period. Those, listen, just listen to, hear me out. Those beautiful beasts, if they stay kosher, even one, then they'll have the ashes to do the purification ritual. Number 2 is, when does the tribulation period kick off? When? Think about this. When does the tribulation period kick off? When the Antichrist confirms a covenant with many. And Bro Chad hit the proverbial nail on the head when he said, when he said um, he believes that the covenant that gets confirmed with many is the Abraham Accords, and that the Antichrist, and I believe this wholeheartedly, the Antichrist gives Israel the green light to rebuild their temple. So look at the timing of this. In the September, October-ish area of this year, we could have a covenant confirmed with many. We could have a red heifer that is kosher and viable, that is sacrificed immediately, and before they break ground on the Temple Mount to rebuild the temple, they could do all their purification processes with the ashes of a heifer. Isn't that good? Isn't that amazing? This has the potential to fall into place beautifully. So if that's correct, that just adds to the excitement of, we could really, 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 really be right at the cusp. Now, the Temple Institution, they've been through this, and they, believe me, they want the red heifer more than we do. I've gone so far to even say that I wouldn't be surprised if the coming Antichrist would pray over one of the red heifers, and the red heifer miraculously becomes kosher. Because I was just trying to figure out in my mind, how is this going to be? That was just, a speculative guess. But the red heifer, there may be red heifers ready for this September, for this October. And the timing of it would be perfect, because uh, that would fit nicely in when the tribulation period starts. Fall trip, a fall trip that starts in the fall and ends in the fall. When Jesus comes in the second coming, he could fulfill all the 3 fall feasts, right? And I would be more than happy that during this year's wheat harvest, right? And how ironic that the world's talking about lack of wheat shortages, wheat crisis, that God's true wheat field, which is the church, gets harvested and taken up to heaven. Okay? Because God's not going to suffer any shortage of his wheat that he has planted, right? So we keep an eye on these red heifers. And to be honest with you, if again, the Temple Institute is very discreet. They're not talking about where they're located. They're keeping this as, pretty hush hush. But they sound, the guy sounded more confident than I've heard him in a while. So if it were possible, I would do like, how they have the soldiers guard the what is it called? The grave of uh the unknown soldier or something in Washington D.C. If it were possible, I would try to set up between this channel, Tyler's channel, Scarborough's channel, Bro Chad's channel, to get around the clock guarding Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Thank you. We guard these heifers. We protect them. We guard them. We make sure. I'd feed them beets. I would get organic beets and feed them red beets all the time. I don't know if that would do anything. You could tell I'm not a hair expert, right? But we would guard these three. Okay, make sure they're getting taken care of, and make sure nobody messes with them. Right? So, all kidding aside, this is something to be really excited about. And I'm not trying to be a sensationalist. I'm not trying to create undue excitement. But this is good news. This is really good news. Okay? So I think it's encouraging. Again, all this doesn't mean anything if you're not saved. And here's the wonderful news about the gospel: we are all sinners, and all those who have sinned have fallen short of the glory of God, and the wages of sin is death. But there is one, a very special one, who is actually the Son of God, who is Jesus the Christ, who came to earth, lived a life without sin, died on the criminal's cross, was crucified, shed his blood, and paid in full the price and penalty for our sin, past, present, and future. He died and was buried and rose again. He did the work. He has redeemed us back to the Father. And so we're saved. Jesus did it all. Jesus did it all. So be encouraged. God has brought to light that, at least as of March 26th, 2022, there's 3 heifers that are qualified. And if they make it 5 or 6 more months, and believe me, I love a nice steak as much as anybody, but I'd be willing to go meatless. If those were the last 3 cows on earth, I would go meatless for the sake of one of these guys making it to the finish line, right? So go to Chick-fil-A. Instead of grabbing a burger, go to Chick-fil-A, have a fish sandwich. There's a lot of fish sandwiches on sale right now. But do not touch these 3 beauties, okay? So having said that, thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Bro Chad, for your update. It really moved me, and I think it moved all of us. But I really, really hope, guys, to see you here, there, but especially in the air. God bless.